Hi there, Pat Gregory, Senior Manager for AI and our core platform here at Spare, and I'm here to talk to you a bit about our Working Smarter Not Harder session at Spare Connect. So the aim of this video is just to give a quick overview over what was covered during Spare Connect as part of the session. So this session was going to go through three core pieces of information. One is what AI is and what it isn't. It'll go through what you can use AI and Spare for today, and three are some general principles as to how to move forward with AI. But first, we asked some questions to the room about who was using AI today, around how often they used it and what they were using it for, and kind of who understands the technology. And from the raise of hands, I was very pleasantly surprised to see a significantly higher uptake of AI tooling than we expected. The session was at 9:15 in the morning, and around 90% of the room had raised their hands to state that they had already used AI that day. And that had included things from calendar management to task management to checking in for their flights the next day. We really were seeing a whole range of different use cases being used by customers across the board, which really demonstrates that AI adoption is here and is here to stay. But when we get into the reality of who understands the technology, we really saw that there was a bit of a gap there. So these next few slides kind of aim to highlight exactly how that works. And the way that we see AI and the kind of modern technologies we refer to as AI with large language models is that they're effectively a really, really, really good tool at predicting words. That's effectively the way that an AI tool works. So it takes a bunch of words and you stick that into an algorithm and it predicts back the word that it should say back to you. And when we say it's really good, we mean it's really, really, really good to the extent to which it's a really transformative technology. So what that means is that if I say hello, the AI will predict that it should say hi. If I say hola, it should predict that it should say hola back to me. If I say how are you, it would predict one word at a time. I'm well, thank you. And again, this is predicting each one of those in sequence. And maybe it'll come back and say you, depending on how it's been trained. If I asked it to tell me about PSTA, which is the kind of host agency for this, the AI that I use to do this talked to me about how in Western Canada, PSTA stands for the Provincial Strategic Threat Analysis. Whereas if I refined that and asked it to tell me about the Pinella Suncoast Transit Authority, it came back with PSTA operates the public bus system that is widely known for pioneering public-private partnerships. And the real key here is that it knows that my instance of AI knows that I live in Western Canada. I live in Vancouver. And as part of that, it might be assuming that I want to know about Western Canada. And the story here is that it is a customizable tool that only knows what you tell it. So in the case of it knowing that I live in Vancouver, it's going to give me an answer that is relevant to Vancouver, rather than an answer that's relevant, in this case, to the Pinella Suncoast Transit Authority. And so when we talk about what all the hype is about, if we kind of take that existing principle and extend it, we think that with the right data and the right guidance, it really becomes a transformational tool. Fundamentally, AI only knows what you tell it. So when we look at a lot of modern transit a lot of kind of existing transit ecosystems, we see significant fragmentation in the tools that they're using. So we see call center software sitting in one place, we see demand response sitting in another place, we see planning sitting somewhere else. And by consolidating that into one unified platform, you can really start to reap the benefits of this tool by giving those AI tools all the context around exactly your business and exactly how you work. But underpinning that is the trust and control to be able to ensure that AI is operating in a way that you would like it to operate in, a way that's kind of limiting the impacts of its kind of further outreach and the ability to kind of customize that to your workflows and your processes in your team. And we fundamentally think the prize is real. We've kind of done some studies ourselves just around as you kind of ramp up operational efficiency through AI adoption, what this could mean for service on the road if you assume a fixed budget. So if you do a lower AI adoption, which means you've got no change to staffing, maybe you're using Scout to help get some quicker answers to questions, maybe you might be able to deliver 5% more service. If you've got higher AI adoption, so you're significantly alleviating call center demand through AI voice, maybe doing a few other things, you could extend that to up to 20%. And if you actually include autonomous vehicles, we think that could go up to as high as 40%. And obviously, autonomous vehicles is an entirely separate topic, but this really helps demonstrate the potential that we're looking at, and that these numbers are reflective of procurement cycles that could be 5 to 10 years long to open up an existing service. So we really think there's a huge amount of opportunity to make existing transit systems significantly more efficient, to extend them across the local communities quite significantly, through the use of AI. So an example of what this looks like is that if I take a workflow, which is maybe a complaints team at a transit agency. Beforehand, we've seen teams that maybe a rider calls in, someone calls in and talks to a human, and they will talk about their complaint. That human will then go and, they'll be writing that down in a spreadsheet somewhere. They'll be putting some identifiers against that to identify maybe what the complaint is referring to. Maybe it's about a specific individual. And they've got to spend the time writing that down, inputting it into the multiple different systems, and then at which point they need to go into those systems and actually figure out what's actually going on, to then eventually draft a response, complete an investigation, draft a response back to the rider, and eventually get that back to the user. In a world that's fully AI first, that user could talk to AI, which would talk to an AI voice product. That could be used to log the complaint. When that complaint is logged, it would automatically get created in Spare. Spare can then, because Spare is interconnected within that ecosystem, we can start putting the trip information, we can start putting the rider information, we can start putting the driver information, start identifying exactly what happened on that trip, why it happened, and if there's a consistent pattern of issues for any aspects of that. Maybe it's the vehicle, maybe it's the driver, and so on. What this means is that as a user, is that I'm not picking up the phone, I'm not doing all the logging, and I'm not doing all the initial investigation. And it means that when that complaint hits my desk, it's already logged, it's already investigated, and there's already a response ready for me to get back to the user, and I can just approve that and spend more time on understanding what I need to do for the user. And rather than just all that kind of administrative work around that. And that's a process that might take days to bring that down to minutes. And we have a bunch of different ways that customers are using AI today in Spare. So dispatchers, as an example, are using AI for lateness investigations. So when a trip is late, it will complete an investigation to understand why. Operations managers are doing a similar thing for OTP. So they can log in and ask about OTP, and it'll just tell you exactly what's going on in that sense. Analysts can be using it for reporting questions. Call center agents can be having their workload alleviated through AI voice support. Caseworkers can be using it for complaint investigations. Eligibility coordinators are using it to summarize their existing cases. And everyone across the agency can be using it for basic knowledge bases. So as an example, you can, within Scout, you can upload any of your internal policies, rider guides, documents, and then you can simply just ask Scout to get an answer to those, rather than trawling through existing knowledge bases, folders, and all this kind of stuff. And again, that's all of these tools help just increase the speed at which we can make decisions. An example of how an agency is using this today would be Contra Valley Transit. An example here is that they would typically produce a board report every month or quarter, and they found that using Scout to actually generate those reports reduced their preparation time by 90%. So instead of spending an hour finding all the reports, putting them into making some new ones, putting them into the right place, they can actually now just get quick answers to Scout. So they can just go and ask Scout what questions they are that they need answering. That can give you a response in 30 seconds. Do that across a few reports, and you've turned a process that was typically an hour long to simply a 5-minute long process. So yeah, at this point, we then went on and did a demo of some of the capabilities across Spare, and then asked users to go and give it a go themselves. So we moved into kind of more of a breakout session at this point. Here are some example questions that we asked the users to use. So within analytics, we asked them to say, what's my OTP by fleet? For request and OTP investigations, they were looking into why this trip was late. For help documentation inside Spare, they were asking, how do I set up a recurring trip? For Spare Connect, we uploaded the schedule so they could actually understand where dinner was that evening. And we also uploaded a dogs in the office policy to everyone's organization so that they could ask questions around their own knowledge base to make that even simpler and easier. And generally speaking, we found a lot of success. Across the board, we found that there was a lot of interest in using Scout for natural language. And what we really took away from this was that agencies are very kind of adept at understanding exactly what they want to ask. And Scout is a fantastic tool to be able to simply just ask the question towards your operation and then to be able to get answers on that, whether that's a report, whether that's an investigation, whether that's a snapshot of something else, maybe that's administration or configuration. There's a ton of opportunity to be using natural language. A good example that we used as part of our demo was to actually maybe it's the beginning of the year, and what we demoed was that you could ask Scout, can I set up time rules, or can I close down my service for all federal holidays this year? Scout would then go and find all the federal holidays. It would find your time rules within the system. It would then say, okay, you're missing these holidays, and it would go and just automatically create those for you. That's something which we've had users kind of previously have struggled with digging into where different aspects of those kind of settings and tools might be across the platform. But in the world of AI, you can simply just ask Scout. And generally speaking, what we found is that AI is great at certain things and struggles with others. And the stuff that it's great at are the stuff which we kind of are really doing now. The stuff that struggles with are the things that we are investing in tooling, because all of these things are things that you are able to mitigate as part of your implementation. So AI is fantastic at repeated and predictable tasks. It's great at communicating conversationally. It's great at summarizing information, so I can ask it to give me information in a different format to someone else. And it's great as personalization, so we can start catering responses and workflows to specific individuals. It can struggle with knowing when it's wrong. That's where making sure that it has access to your data is key, so that it can pull your information where possible. Original thinking, as I mentioned, AI is a word prediction engine, and as part of that, obviously predicting words is not necessarily an original thought. Those are kind of fundamentally counterintuitive things, and also complex calculations. And as part of this, AI is not a calculator, but what we can do is we can give AI a calculator to be able to understand